And then first of all, we have got the face. So the face is that kind of manipulative, charismatic, kind of talky character that most groups have. There's kind of the face is kind of that unofficial nickname, isn't it, for that kind of class you might play like Pathfinder or D&D, where you're like, oh, I suppose I've got to talk to the nobles and be the kind of face for the group. So I wanted to put that into the game. The face has kind of come from a little bit of Bard as well. And that's been the kind of leading influence for that too. The thing is, none of these classes are going to be magical in any sense, even though some of them do have some features that are similar to the SRD classes, like the Technician builds off the Sorcerer a little bit. So the face doesn't have any magical powers as such, but we certainly have some cool stuff that they can do, and we'll talk about some of the influences as well there for some of them. So it's a D8 hit dice, and then proficiencies include a pretty simple mix of melee and ranged weapons. So a simple ranged weapon is stuff from tasers to actual kind of like bows and crossbows and stuff, the modern versions of those. But they also include pistols. So you're not at a massive disadvantage when it comes to firearms, but they don't have as much range in terms of their like ranged weapon equipment as, say, the soldier or something like that. Disguise kits is a pretty obvious one for the face. Think about all those cool scenes in like Inception or Mission Impossible where they've like put on the disguise, or they've put on like the full head mask thing. That's the idea behind that. That they are proficient in disguise kits. Cars simply for their vehicles. There's a few broad stroke different proficiencies for vehicles, but cars gives them access to most stuff that you're probably going to see when you're out in the field, that kind of thing. And as we scroll down, Dex and Charisma saving throws. And then skills, if you've got the quick start, you'll have the whole range of skills available to look at. I'll mention these as they come up today. You get to choose 3 from, so Deception, and you can see Persuasion in there later in the list too. I mean, that is going to be the kind of go-to face skills, I think. Also Espionage being the kind of gathering and kind of deciphering of information, so it's making links, it's listening into a conversation, knowing what that means, knowing what that intelligence is. Whereas Infiltration is about actually like, it's like kind of burglary kind of skills. It's like casing places, figuring out the best path to get into a location, getting past guards, figuring that kind of stuff out intelligently. So the face is all about that too, I think, where they're kind of, maybe they've actually got into somewhere in a disguise. Now they've got to figure out, oh, now I've got to get to like that corner of the room. So like, I thought Infiltration would be a good one for them to have. Then Insight. Insight's a clear one. It's like cold reading. It's like getting a tell on your mark, figuring out all that kind of stuff. So that's a clear one for phase 2, I think. Perception's always good, always a handy skill to have at any point. And then Sleight of Hand and Stealth as well. I thought Sleight of Hand would be cool for the face, because it gives them kind of a thing where, you know, if you ever watch like any of Darren Brown's little tricks, where he's kind of charming somebody or misdirecting them, and actually, like, there was one time where he actually managed to take a tie off somebody. So I thought Sleight of Hand would be a cool one there too, because it gives you a little bit of that kind of up close kind of con artistry with thievery put in. So that would be cool. I'm not going to go too much into equipment today because we've got quite a bit to cover. We've got 8 full character classes just to kind of chat through. So let's head off to some of their features. So first feature you're going to get as a face is the old cover identities. So you have like a multitude of working cover identities, including your own true identity. And they function exactly like real identities. I thought this, like, going all the way to, like, actually there is a house on a street somewhere where, like, that just sits empty unless you're in it. It could be that even the agency you work for could actually plant actors there. So you could have a family, or you could have housemates or something as well. And it also provides any official documentation. So I mean that to be like passports and like driving licenses, all that kind of stuff. So when you begin as the face, you begin with one cover identity, and you can decide the background for this identity, and that background ties into the backgrounds that come up later in the chapter, in the kind of second section. So the backgrounds that supplement your classes. So you actually get to decide that background, as well as its profession or vocations or anything like that would come with it. The identity functions as if it was true and is an almost infallible disguise. So police or like the tax people or whatever, anyone who kind of asks you about that, they're going to show you identification. If they check that against their databases and stuff, it is all legit. It's like you exist as this person. You also get the equipment granted by that background. So there are a couple of backgrounds that like give you stuff. If they do, then you get that too. Whilst you're functioning as the cover identity, not necessarily all the time. And then you get more of those as you level up as well. So that's all cool. Theme was a cool thing that I learned about from a little bit of a documentary I watched on like MI5, MI6 about a declassified agent who was talking about some of the techniques that they used. One of the coolest ones or one of the more casual ones at least, weirdly enough, came up was the theme. And a theme is where you're establishing a mode of behavior in a public or in a kind of maybe like corporate or a kind of official space where people take you for someone that you're not, but you're doing it while you're looking for intelligence. So it could be that you're going out shopping or you're a tourist or something. So imagine you're a tourist and you've got a big map, you're wearing like a stupid tourist fedora or something. Like people always wear stupid hats when they're on holiday, right? And sunglasses, and you're looking a bit confused and you're like looking for the map and to figure out where to go. You're on your phone, maybe, stuff like that. That all creates this idea that you are this tourist. You are this character you're trying to portray. But you're not really doing any of that. What you're really doing is checking in the area, checking if anyone's tailing you, checking for maybe a bit of surveillance that you're doing. So theme lets you do that. But what it lets you do, it lets you make an infiltration check and add your charisma bonus to that. So it ups that bit more. And the ability check result that becomes the difficulty class for enemy agents to discover your presence. So it's better than just rolling, say, deception and just placing yourself in a scene where people might not figure you out, you know. Jack of all trades is going to be pretty recognizable. Some of you folks who play the fantasy version of 5e, that is just from second level, add your half your proficiency bonus rounded down to anything where you haven't actually kind of picked the skill in that. So it gives the face a little bit of everything, and it just makes them not suck at stuff that's not talking to people. And then from third level, you get to choose a face archetype. And the two that we're going to have on offer from the beginning of the Kickstarter are going to be Greyman and Master Manipulator, and I'll come to those a little bit later as well. And then from fourth level, and again at varying points up the scale, as per usual, we're going to do the ability score improvements for each class. So this for the face, it's 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, and 19th. So as usual, you get to increase one ability score by 2, or 2 ability scores by 1 each. And as normal, you can't increase any of your ability scores above 20. But in addition to that, what we're also going to do, and this came out from some of the testing that you can still watch online on my YouTube channel, that we did on here on this channel, we're actually going to give equipment upgrades for the classes. So it's not that at the beginning at level 1, you just get this, and then you hopefully acquire more gear as you adventure. Because what's happening in the spy game is that each mission you go on at the very beginning, once you've had your briefing, you get a kind of like a gear pick or an equipment like requisition. So basically what you do is you decide as a group what you want to grab for the mission, who you want to give that to, and then proceed to the mission. So instead of finding magic items along the way and kind of being quite possessive of those and keeping those on hand, what you do is work as a group to figure out, well, what do we want to take on this mission? Anything from like rocket launchers to like grabbing a helicopter to anything like that, and all kind of cool gadgets too. So there'll be a mix of equipment to pick, which is kind of more standard stuff, like if you want just cameras or bugs or like first aid kits or anything like that, that's a bit more mundane. And then you can also pick gadgets, and there'll be a few slots for those where, depending on the kind of severity of the mission, you'll be able to pick, or like the kind of DEFCON levels. If it's the like priority 1, like it's the most daring, important mission the world will ever not know about, then you can pick some amazing gadgets. But as these classes level up, what we're going to do is offer them better equipment at the beginning of every mission. So you'll notice if we scroll back up, is that way back up here, even though I brushed over this, to just say that when it says you may select the following equipment at the beginning of every mission, you get to mix and match a little bit of what you take. So if you pick a light pistol over a knife for one mission, you're not stuck with the choice. You can always pick, because the thing that's different about this, particularly from the kind of fantasy settings, is that agencies are going to have a fair amount of this stuff in like technical services or like in lockers lying around, and it's really up to the agents and their handler what they're going to take on each mission. So it's not about scarcity, it's not about finding that stuff out in the field. It's about equipping yourself properly before actually going out on a mission, because you always know a little bit about what you're going to do. It'll be very rare where you don't do that, and maybe those will be those missions that have a higher priority rating or something, and so you'll be able to take more. It may even be that you kind of leave some spare equipment and gadget slots open so that you can get stuff in the field as well. So that kind of thing. And then for the face, unarmored, which I believe was a bit of a port from Barbarian. It was a bit of a mix on that. At 7th level, when you're not wearing any armor, your AC equals 10 plus your dex plus your wisdom. And you can still use a shield and get that. So obviously the face is probably going to be the class that goes into places, and is going to have to look the part. So they're not going to be able to wear much in terms of armor. There might be some cool gadgets from, like, I've just watched John Wick and he had like a bulletproof tuxedo. There might be some cool gadgets that you can do that with. But unarmored just gives you a little edge when it comes to other classes who might be a bit more proficient in armor. Whereas you might have to go into a lot of scenarios where you are unarmored, because they have to check you and pat you down so that you're not even like wearing a wire kind of thing. And then recognition is about never forgetting a face, basically, even behind a disguise. So that's from 11th level. And you can also gain a +2 bonus to wisdom perception checks relating to empathy and reading another person. Already a bit of a rata there for me, I think, in this little preview. We've got insight checks, so really I think that's wisdom insight. But that's so +2 bonus rather than the proficiency modifier, like, again, you know. So let me write that down, because that's cool. Right. Recognition. And if you have any questions as well, pop them in chat. I'm sure James is in here too, if I can find the thing. I'll be able to answer them. Team player is another little combat thing, because we wanted to throw a couple of combat class features into each class at least, because there are a couple of classes that are quite focused on non-combat stuff like hacker or face, but there will still be a lot of wet work in those. So I wanted to include some combat stuff. So from 13th level, basically as an action, you can grant a bonus action to someone else. Attack, dodge, or disengage. Quick change is a fun one, again, from some of the techniques that I've seen on little YouTube videos, documentaries about how the CIA works and disguises and stuff like that. So from 14th level, you can quickly change your appearance with a disguise kit in plain sight. So this is like, there's people around you, or you're like running through a shop. There's a bit in Baby Driver where he's trying to put on a quick kind of disguise or just change his appearance up a little bit. As an action, you can make a dexterity stealth check and rapidly change your appearance. So you change some items of clothing, put on a hat, take off a wig, put on some glasses. It's kind of basic stuff that just changes like how you look. And there are some big kind of bold things that you can do that. So like a different hair color is a big change for people, because hair color is a natural thing. I think people take, even though we dye a lot of our hair a lot nowadays, it's a big thing for people, and because it's not an item of clothing, you kind of, it like sinks into your subconscious a little bit more. So if you go from like bright platinum blonde and whip off a wig and now you've got brunette hair, people aren't looking for a brunette haired agent, you know? So it's something like that where you can do this in more or less plain sight, and there are some videos online that you can see of people doing it, and there's some remarkable changes that can happen. So targets trying to identify you within line of sight must succeed a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. So that's just, if the guards aren't stupid, they can see that you have done it. But if they kind of take their eyes off you for a second, or if they kind of block line of sight for a second, they might not recognize you again. Characters trying to identify you after you've done the quick change that didn't see you change have to make a new wisdom perception check against your dexterity stealth check to recognize you, based off the roll that you made. So that should be really cool. I can't wait to see that in action. Polyglot is about languages. So there's often a lot of spy movies where the agent makes like a surprise phrase, or like, you know, again, John Wick 2, I just watched it. There's an agent there who uses sign language, uses ASL, I think, and he signs back a few times, which is great. And you don't expect it, or it's like, you know, James Bond suddenly speaks Japanese or something. Like, it's that kind of those kind of things. So at 15th level, you've learned to speak eloquently in several languages, so you gain a number of new languages equal to your intelligence modifier. And also, you can ignore disadvantage due to using a language you're not fluent in to convey just like basic information. Like, could be like stop or freeze or I surrender or something like that. It's just like, if you want to get something across that's just really basic, then that's not going to stop you. And then Master of Disguise is, I think, a straight up port from the SRD as well. So the disguise kits you use are distinguishable from the real thing. You make a charisma deception check while wearing a disguise. You add your wisdom modifier to the ability check and automatically succeed against enemies with a wisdom score of 11 or less, which is probably quite a few. I'm imagining the way we're writing them is quite a few guards, or kind of lower ranking agents and stuff. You'll be able to just get through them like really easy. So the two archetypes we're going to have for the face are the Grey Man and the Master Manipulator. So the Grey Man is inspired by those kind of government agents, kind of Men in Black style stuff, where it can be anything from like a janitor to a police officer to someone in authority who, because of the social situation you are in, or like a security guard or something, where you don't think too much about like recognizing them, thinking about their face. They're just somebody who kind of blends into the background. Anyone wearing a high vis, that kind of thing. And it's being able to manipulate people in that way so that they can easily forget you, and so that you can blend into the background. So hidden in plain sight at 3rd level when you choose the archetype is all about when you're wearing one of those kind of uniforms, you gain a bonus equal to your proficiency bonus to hide in groups in urban areas. And your proficiency bonus is applied to the DC of ability checks made to recognize your likeness. So it could be like the GM picks a DC, or like uses like a passive stealth, and you get to add your proficiency bonus to that. Cold reading is all about insight again. Whenever you make a charisma deception check against a target, they must make a wisdom saving throw with a DC equal to 10 plus your proficiency modifier. If they fail, you may learn some basic information about their NPC that they give away from subtle facial expressions and body language. So cold reading is exactly that. It's learning to read a person, read the situation, read their body language in such a minute way that they give away certain personal information about them. Could be that I'm literally playing with my wedding ring. Could be that they have taken off their wedding ring, but maybe they hold that finger, or maybe there's indentation there. Maybe they lead with a certain hand, something like that. It all tells you stuff about people that can be really useful. Corporate identity is basically a bit like a kind of gadget pick for free. It's basically you get a little bonus kind of identity that is to do with like a kind of official organization. So like a military organization, government, corporate, anything like that. And you can use that for the duration of the mission. Again, it's one of those things that, like, if it's checked, it will come up in databases because you planted that information first. That's kind of all the gadgets are all about. It's actually not just a bit of paper, the kind of forgery on it. It's actually having done the legwork and put those kind of things in. And then on the inside is pretty cool. It's one I tried at LARP and when we did a kind of spy LARP before, and it's really fun. I'm hoping that it sticks around. So from 16th level, before your combat begins, from which you are absent, you can make a Wisdom infiltration check with a DC of 20 to place yourself as a member of enemy forces. The GM adds one or more enemy characters that is equal or lower than a quarter of your level's challenge rating at the start of combat. Following me so far? Basically, you plant a couple of enemy NPCs in the first round of combat. And in that first round of combat, you can pick one of them to then just reveal yourself as. So you've planted yourself into the combat, into like the situation, and then get a surprise round on the enemy, which is pretty cool. I hope it sticks around. Then Master Manipulator is our other character archetype. It's the kind of Derren Brown con artist type person. It's basically the kind of mentalist is the kind of word for it, I guess. But you can misdirect influence and use like psychological techniques to mislead people. Even going as far in the upper levels as kind of like a very low level kind of brainwashing or kind of low level hypnosis kind of thing. Like, it's super creepy, some of the stuff that can be done to people, but brains are very easily confused, very easily persuaded into certain things. Like, from you interpreting, like, your vision is they say is based, like, a certain percentage of it on memory, like 20 to 40% of it is based on memory. Like, what you see isn't actually what you see, it just, your brain kind of fills in the rest because it's lazy. So that is it's intriguing but also quite scary, like, in a way. But befriend is a bit of a kind of charm technique. So you can make befriending a target takes an appropriate amount of time and setting. So you can chat to them for ages. They must make a charisma saving throw or be lured into a false friendship. While the target is befriended, any further saving throws against you are at disadvantage, and any further charisma checks against the target gain a +2 modifier. And then keywords are a part of the kind of psychological techniques where you're dropping in a word like in the middle of a sentence and it almost not being picked up on, almost not being perceived. So starting at 6th level, you lace your speech with these words, subliminally conditioning your target. You make a charisma deception check against the target's passive intelligence. If you succeed, you may direct them to perform one simple action, like moving to a nearby location, looking in a particular direction, or placing their weapon down. So that could be a guard that you're talking to, that you're pretending to be, like, you know, the janitor again or whatever, and some of these keywords just start making them think about just putting their weapon down now. So now they're disarmed, and now you can, like, the infiltrator behind them can now sneak up on them, kind of thing. You must both be fluent in the language you're using, and the GM always has final say, because, again, we're not into magic spells here in the spy game. Punch bag I thought was quite fun. It's a punch bag, a little bit like Nerd Rage in Fallout 3, I think. It's more like it's basically you pretending to be less, I don't know, fighty than you actually appear to be. You actually are. So at 9th level, when you're the target of a melee attack, you can allow the target, the attacker, to automatically hit you. And if you do, then the attacker takes a -2 penalty to their AC until the beginning of their next turn. So basically, they attack you, but they provided you an opening to attack them. And yeah, they let their guard down. And then from 13th level, you also gain an advantage on attack rolls while this penalty is in effect. So it's just like doubled up on the ability there as well. And then Entrance is from 18th level, and it's going into some of that more like low-level hypnosis kind of stuff. You can put unaware or friendly targets to sleep with a hypnotic command. So unaware being maybe that you actually put yourself in line of sight of somebody, but then it's that kind of immediate like sleep kind of thing, and like people go down. So the target makes a wisdom saving throw with a DC equal to your charisma score, and if they fail, they fall asleep. So see the unconscious condition.